Hello, welcome to another Burgundy with Tweedy video, yet again the same location. Sorry, I just really like this tree. I should give it a name, Treedy. Maybe, I don't know. This is another wine from that other Gavignet producer. Sorry if that's a bit too far for you to see the label correctly. This is Alain Maurice Gavignet, probably some relative of the more familiar Gavignet that I often feature on this channel, which is Philippe Gavignet. You may remember a little while ago I tried the Haute Côte de Nuits from Les Dames Huguettes, which I still can't pronounce properly, which was interesting because it was a parallel with a vineyard in the Haute Côte de Nuits that the other Gavignet also produces wine from. So similarly, we have a village level Nuits Saint-Georges, which is something that the other Gavignet also produces. This is a 2020 vintage. Don't know anything really else to say about it apart from that, really. Wonderfully gloomy day on the heath. It is actually a Sunday afternoon, which is normally a bad time to come because it's overrun with people having their mopey end of the week strolls. But it has been raining for a reasonable amount of today. It was raining quite a lot this morning. Although it has more or less stopped now, I think that has put a lot of people off. I'm just left with this very dank forest floor, the sous-bois. Not that many people around, and there's always going to be some people on a Sunday afternoon, no matter how bad the weather is. The dog walkers seem to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Indomitable? No, you know, they all come out in all weathers. I'm sure there's a word for that. That came out a little bit too easily, I think, that cork. Owing to a packing oversight, I have only brought along my backup glass that I'd normally shove in the bag just in case I knock the other one over and it falls in the dirt or it gets slugs on it or something. So this is even worse than the usual stemware. You can see it doesn't really taper in properly at the top. So this is probably really squandering the wine and not really giving it a fair test in that horribly shaped plastic glass. But there we go. This is the price you pay for the joy of drinking in this beautiful environment, this damp woodland. So we have to take all of this with a pinch of salt today because all of these tasting notes are going to be even less reliable than normal, given the even less than usually perfect stemware. It's already imperfect. You get what I'm talking about. Shut up, Tweedy. That is a relatively dark colour, isn't it? Relatively deep, dark colour. Before the first swirling, I am definitely getting some dark fruit. There might be a little hint of black currant in there, but also more hedgerowy sort of blackberries, that kind of thing. Possibly slightly plummy. I do feel like I'm getting a bit of sous-bois. As always, that could very well be environmental. There's something a little bit kind of woody, forest flory in amongst that. Okay? Had a little bit of a swirl in this very, very imperfect wine glass with a little bit of a swirl, slightly fruitier, slightly fresher. I'm kind of appealing, actually. It's dark fruit, but the tone of it is quite bright, if that makes sense. It's very fresh, dark fruit. Yeah, sort of blackcurrant, blackberries, possibly a bit of plum, that kind of thing. A little bit hedgerowy, quite nice. Appropriate for this sort of autumnal weather, I think, in a damp woodland. On the palate, that is beautifully smooth. Not getting any sense of tannins in that first sip. Really quite rich and fruity. I often say I think Nuits Saint-Georges has a lot to do with fruit expression, and that may just be the collective Gavignets that particularly do it in that style, but getting really juicy, bold, dark and perhaps slightly red fruit on the palate. Lovely mouthfeel to that, very, very smooth. Silky but very fruity. Silky fruit, like juicy fruit, was it, that chewing gum? Does that still exist, juicy fruit? I'm sure I've referenced that before. It has a really nice balance to it. Good amount of acidity, decent amount of sweetness. I'd say this is certainly not excessively sweet, but if you want a very, very reflective, austere, thin, elegant sort of wine, this is certainly not it. I think, as in my previous video, I'm always reluctant to use the J word, the J bomb. I wouldn't want to call this jammy, but it certainly is big and fruity, and correspondingly there is, I think, a proportionate amount of sweetness to this. I don't think it's excessive, but I certainly wouldn't call this dainty and elegant. Possibly getting slight hints of slightly cooked fruit there. Again, cooked usually is a bad word in terms of wine, but sort of a compote of black currants and blackberries. Maybe it's veering more towards the blackberry now and the plumminess. Black currant as a fruit character in Pinot Noir in Burgundy, to me always ends up being a little bit thin. I think of blackcurrant expressive Pinot Noir wines as being quite thin, usually, I don't know, they're sort of more mineral, elegant styles, whereas this is definitely quite thick by Pinot Noir standards. Weird light now. I don't know if that's coming out on camera, but it's gone sort of funny, almost sort of orangey colour, a bit weird. Maybe starting to notice a slight hint of tannic edge to this, a tiny bit of licoricey periphery, but basically this is really juicy, really fresh, really luscious, really lovely actually, dark black fruit, lovely silky mouthfeel. So I'm really enjoying that. I may come back to you later with some further tasting notes on a subsequent glass, but if not, maybe I can do this all just in a single take for a change. I think that is pretty good stuff, and I suppose in a way this is slightly reminiscent of Philippe Gavignet's Nuits Saint Georges. That has a similar, very fruit expressive style, so it obviously runs in the family, if indeed they are related, which surely they must be somehow. Cheers.